I know it's Keanu Reeves as Shadow, but I just kept thinking John Wick as Shadow, and it made the movie so much cooler.
Guns. Lots of guns.
Sonic, you finally found your family.
Try to keep up.
I know it hasn't always been easy.
So Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles reunite against a powerful new adversary, Shadow, a mysterious villain with powers unlike anything they have faced before. This third entry, like the other two, is rated PG for action, violence, rude humor, thematic elements, and mild language. I know it's a funny thing to say this, but admittedly, it pushes the PG boundaries. That's ridiculous, but if you're taking your young kids, if they're a little on the younger of the young side, the youngest, and you don't want them to see a movie that's pushing those PG-13 boundaries, some darker moments. You've got Shadow, you've got a very tragic backstory there, and some elements that may be more emotional. I just want you to know, as parents, as someone with a young child, I have to think about these things, but she's one, so she's too young for Sonic 3. You know who's not too old? Me. As a Sonic fan, pushing 30. One thing I appreciate about this franchise is that even though it's clearly geared towards kids, I mean, some movies are family friendly, some movies are specifically and solely for young children. I wouldn't say this is a full-on family movie. It's not going to appeal to everyone who's outside of that hardcore Sonic fandom. It's definitely a kids' film, but with the caveat of a movie that is made with lots of love and admiration for the character of Sonic and the characters surrounding Sonic. And this stays right in line with the other two, except I would say Sonic 3 is more action-packed, more full of those nods and cameos. And some of the issues I've had with the other Sonic films, from the blatant references that you still have here with Dr. Eggman, and occasionally a line or two that's a little over the top, but they scale back on that. They scale back on the human subplots that I could personally care less about in these Sonic movies, and they give you more of the characters that you love. And that ranges from Shadow to Sonic to Knuckles to Tails to everyone involved. Not that I don't like James Marsden and company. He's a very integral part of Sonic's character, and they prove that yet again in this movie. But sometimes they'll give them dialogue that feels like it's not really written for their characters. It's almost like they're not still living in the world, the real world that we're living in with Sonic and company. And so they'll say things that's either exposition heavy or does really cliche things that sometimes Tails says. It's like, it's time to go on another adventure, Sonic. I'm like, just like, that's not how humans talk to each other. It's fine. It's a movie that's geared toward kids, like I said. But when James Marsden's spouting it out, or this general character that we barely get to know, but he comes in, gives us an exposition dump. It's some of the most ridiculous dialogue. Everything's so silly. The scene was great because of kind of where we were, the nods and the Easter eggs of that moment. But he comes in, he's like, Sonic, I need you to complete this very important mission. Here's the entire backstory, what your goal is and what your friends are going to have to do. Except he's just dead serious. Like, there's no humor from his character. And I'm just like, that's all right. It fits in this world, but come on. Thankfully, even though as a 30-year-old, those moments are definitely going to take me out of the movie, there isn't that much of that. I feel like less of that in Sonic 3 compared to 1 and 2, and it's more so just Sonic and company, Shadow's mission at hand, but also the reason why Shadow is here in the first place, how he got here, but also how he ties into, Jim Carrey's. Because Mr. Carrey, while playing Ivo Robotnik, also plays Gerald Robotnik, his pop. Please keep in mind, whenever I say less human characters, I'm not talking about Robotnik, either version, because Jim Carrey may as well be animation. He is so animated in these movies. First of all, it's really the only time we're seeing Jim Carrey right now. That's sad. But it's also some of his best work comedically. I kid you not. Austin, it's a Sonic movie. Yeah, who cares? First of all, the guy's smart. He's reinventing himself for kids, which is awesome. But he's just as iconic as this character as Ben Schwartz is for Sonic. He is so good. His humor is over the top, ridiculous, self-referential, pop culture referential, which again, when these movies tend to do that, I'm just kind of checking out. But when Robotnik does it, it's not bothering me as much. I'll say he makes a superhero reference in this film, not to spoil what it is, but I'm just like, only he could get away with it. Granted, other people do it, but only he in this movie could get away with that. I mean, he's literally multiple times with his humor, not technically, but breaking the fourth wall because he's so outlandish. And actually, not just Robotnik's relationship with his grandfather, who is also Jim Carrey, but Agent Stone, who's been his right-hand man, plays a little bit of a pivotal role in his character development this time around. And so that dynamic's great. Now, as a Sonic Adventure 2 fan, hardcore, one of my favorite video games of all time. Look, I'm a Sonic fan in general, but this is the game for me. There are some elements in here, from Robotnik's role to Shadow's role to how Shadow and Sonic operate with and against each other, that just had me tickled. I was tickled.
This is a load of barnacles.
I'm a movie critic here to judge the film, absolutely. The first two are fun enough. They work for kids and adults. Ridiculous, over-the-top, expositional, sure. But I'm watching this third movie going, I didn't feel this way watching the first two. And that is the fan inside me speaking. And admittedly, I'm a little bit biased there because as a movie critic, there's a lot to judge here within the dialogue, especially with those flashback sequences that halt the momentum big time. But some of those flashback sequences and those scenes in general that are speaking to my Sonic Adventure 2 fandom here really worked for me. But it's not just that, man. There are so many nods. And if this movie is taking from one game, it is that introduction to Shadow that we all experienced as a kid. And if you're not a hardcore Sonic fan, you're probably watching this going, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't share in that nostalgia. Nostalgia is a powerful drug. Remember that, kids. And you're going to admittedly have a little bias while watching. If you're a hardcore Sonic fan, that bias is already instilled with these movies, regardless of the outcome. Thankfully, they get a lot of those elements right. But if you're a fan of that game, and if you're a fan of Shadow and that story, they incorporate those elements, and you could tell the people involved did their research here. That's all I'm going to say. Because the third act, there are some things with the first two acts where we're halting, going backward, going forward. The general character is just ridiculously over the top. Kristen Ritter comes in. She's kind of wasted in this movie. At one point, some guy's just laying on the ground. He looks dead, and instead of going to look after him and check on him, she's like, oh, the key, where is it? And I'm just like, a real person wouldn't. Whatever, these are Sonic movies. Listen, the third act of this film, I was giddy, man. And I can't help it. I grew up playing that game on the GameCube, and I wanted to see certain things and feel certain things and a sense of scale, which is absolutely there. Also, these movies are very colorful. You got to give them credit for being colorful, for capturing that adventure, for capturing that style, for doing some of those things that you want a Sonic movie to do. Thank God they pivoted with that first movie with the design. Ugly Sonic is ugly as sin. Evil! But everything from the action to the music to the Dragon Ball Z-like finale, that's as far as I'm going to go there. It was so cool to see, and they take this beyond where they've taken this in the first two movies, and it adds something to it. It adds something that genuinely made me giddy inside as a fan. And this entire third act, I'm just eating this movie up. Well, say what you will about the first two acts. I'm sitting here going, this is payoff. They know the fandom. They know that kids are going to eat this up. They were freaking out in my theater because this was a fan/critic screening. Guys, if you're a Sonic fan, this is everything the first two movies did, plus more. And I mean a lot more. I saw Lila Brown, the young actress who plays Maria. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. She was also in Furiosa this year. Good year. Really good year. Good job. I can't also not shout out Idris Elba, who once again does a great job as Knuckles, showing this care behind this wall that's built up. Colleen O'Shaughnessy, classic Tails. Here's what we're going to do, Sonic. We're going to type these things into this computer. It's such cliched dialogue, but you love it because it's Tails, and that's what Tails does. And then, of course, Ben Schwartz as Sonic. Perfect. I mean, just perfect for this character.
It was perfect.
Before I give you my score, what's your favorite Sonic movie thus far? If you want to see a ranking from me, all three movies, drop that like down below. If I get enough, I will rank the three Sonic films in short form. And this delivers everything longtime fans are looking for. The nods are widespread and exciting. Certain references will appease young and old fans alike, and the third act is as action-packed as any I've seen this year. Keanu's Shadow is a legit addition to the franchise, and Jim Carrey is working overtime to deliver another standout comedic performances. Similar issues linger from the first two, as the exposition is heavy and the tone is all over the place, but as a family film geared towards kids, this is much more self-aware and entertaining than most others in the genre. And that's the thing. We've been spoiled, except the opposite, with bad video game movies. And so now that we're finally getting good projects like The Last of Us, which is drastically different than this, but this knows what it's supposed to be. And I'm not saying it's the best movie ever, because as a movie, it has its issues, but as an experience with Sonic, it works. And that's all we're asking for as fans. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you in my next review. We're doing Mufasa. Don't forget about Mufasa. Hopefully I don't.